Welcome back to NJN's coverage of Governor Whitman's State of the State address. I'm Kent Manahan, joined here in our NJN studios by Republican and Democratic analysts Roger Bodman and Walter Fields. And Roger, let me begin with you. We've just heard the governor's remarks in her speech about an hour or so, maybe slightly under. Your perspective of the issues and the areas the governor touched on.
Well, I thought I saw a very confident and comfortable governor, Kent. A governor that appeared to have a very steady hand on the policy tiller, if you will, as she goes into the final 2 years. And as you pointed out a moment ago, she does not consider herself a lame duck whatsoever. She's going to put as much energy into her last 2 years, she says, as she did in her first two. And it was a forward-looking speech. It was a speech that addressed areas of the economy, moving into the high-tech sector, of the environment, as she dealt with areas like watershed protection and told us we should be as worried about our cup, the water in our coffee, as the air we breathe and other matters. And she talked about education and creating partnerships with NJEA and mentoring and so forth. So I thought it was a very forward-looking speech, and the elderly, I should add, about as all of our friends and relatives and parents get older and dealing with home health care and things of that nature. I think it was a very forward-looking speech with a governor that was very much in control.
Your assessment, Walter, and anything left out?
Well, I think it's interesting she talked about new technology, but missed the opportunity to simulcast her speech on the internet, or to go into a chat room after the speech. So sort of she talks about this vision of new technology, but doesn't use the new technology she's talking about. And certainly technology is important, but we can't forget about some of the old problems that still remain in our state. It's great to talk about investment in technology in cities, but we also have some serious problems in our inner cities. In spite of an economic boom, we still have some of the poorest urban areas in the United States. We need to talk about public education reform. We need to talk about health care in our cities. She talked about asthma. We need to talk about asthma. We need to talk about lead paint. We need to talk about all of those problems like infant mortality and pediatric AIDS that still afflict our cities. So it's great to talk about new technology in the future and paint a rosy picture, but there's some hardcore policy issues that have to be dealt with before we can even get there.
Was that glaring, Roger?
I don't think so. I mean, many of these problems have been addressed. Clearly, there are other problems that the state must address. But I think that, as we enter this new millennium, she really put forward a program that starts to address those issues in a very forward-looking way. And as we discussed before she went on, Walter, the fact is that the Republicans that control the legislature are very anxious to have her be successful. Those Republicans in the legislature that would like to succeed her in office want nothing but a successful Whitman term. Well, and the Democrats, on the other hand, have a little different problem. They have two Democratic parties in the Assembly that I last saw.
And speaking of the Democrats, we want to hear from them, and we are going to go now back to the Assembly chambers at the State House, where Michael Aron is standing by with the Democratic response to the governor's remarks today. Michael?
Ken, I'm joined by Senator Bernard Kenny of Hoboken, the Assistant Senate Minority Leader. We're going to be joined by Assembly Minority Leader Joe Doria shortly, we hope, although he's on his way up. Senator Kennedy, your response to your reaction to the governor's speech?
Well, the governor has 2 years left, and she wanted to set forth an agenda that would contribute to her legacy. And I think it's appropriate that, given the calendar, the year 2000, and the developments in technology over the last 20 years, that a governor of the state of New Jersey is trying to attach policy making to these new technologies and these new economies. And I think it's an appropriate thing to do. And it's hard for me to assess as a layman the impact of $165 million plan as the governor set forth. But I think it's certainly a step in the right direction.
Did you feel that the governor was appropriating enough money for the various, she ticked off about 24 initiatives in the high-tech area, in education, in the environment, and for the elderly. Did these strike you as smaller amounts of money than you've heard from the governor in the past?
Yeah, I was looking at it. As you know, Michael, we have a $20 million budget in the New Jersey's
$20 billion
budget, and this New Jersey's economy is one of the most powerful in the nation. So I looked at the 165, and a good part of that, I think, is private dollars as well.
About 100 million is state dollars.
State dollars, okay, so 65 is private. That's why I said it's hard for me to assess as a layman what the impact of these dollars would be. That's why I view it as a good first step for a governor of the state of New Jersey to recognize these technologies.
All right, we're now joined by the Assembly Minority Leader, Joe Doria of Bayonne, Mayor of Bayonne as well. Assemblyman, your reaction to the governor's speech?
It was a good speech as far as it went. I think the emphasis on the future and on economic development through job creation in the high-tech areas are very important. It's something that we began in the 1980s. Tom Kane began it, and we were involved with the Job, Science, and Technology Bond issue, the creation of the Science and Technology Commission. So New Jersey's already led the way. I think the emphasis was good. I think what really is notable in the speech is what was left out. A lot of issues of importance to the people of the state were not mentioned. Property taxes, transportation, trust fund. A minimum mention about school construction. Profiling was left out totally.
Property taxes, I think she feels she addressed property taxes with the rebate program and the inflation adjustment and the freeze for senior citizens and veterans. You don't think?
I think the problem with property taxes is still there. It's been ameliorated to a degree, but people still are paying the highest property taxes in the nation in New Jersey, and we still are overly dependent on property taxes.
Profiling, there was no mention of racial profiling or the state police. You say that you think it should have been in there?
Well, I think given the fact it's been a major issue over the year, there should have been some type of mention of it and talking about how no movement has been made to try to improve the situation. It's been in the news continuously for almost a year.
She did address school construction. She urged the legislature to get its act together and pass a massive school construction bill. And the Transportation Trust Fund, I assume she's going to address in the budget message. It's more of a money item, yes?
Yeah, no question. Auto emissions testing and the lines that are there, again, another problem that the citizens of the state are facing today that people are concerned about wasn't mentioned.
Do you think that should have been mentioned, the auto inspection situation?
Yes, I think it should have been mentioned. Obviously, the governor doesn't want to mention it because right now it's a problem, but I think she could have found a way to do it to show her sensitivity.
Let me talk about some of the individual items that she brought up. You both applaud the high-tech orientation, and I asked Senator Kenney before you arrived whether $165 million is the right amount of money. He said he wasn't sure. He couldn't tell. Your thought on that?
Well, I think that the amount of money is obviously a good start. We have been developing over the past the incubators that the governor spoke about. Science and Technology Commission has been working on a shoestring. The governor, when she first came in, cut funding for science and technology. So I'm happy now she's moving forward. I think $165 million is a good step in the direction to help create more jobs.
Cyber districts like empowerment zones, is that a good concept? You're an urban mayor.
Oh, I think it's an excellent concept, and I think it's something that will, again, help to create innovation and encourage incubators.
In the area of education, the governor wants to focus on early education, early childhood education in the Abbott districts. She's going to put about $65 million, new dollars, into create more full-day early childhood education, preschool for 3- and 4-year-olds. Your comment on that?
Well, we are certainly in favor of that, but I want to go back to what Joe said about the Educational Facilities Act. The governor did mention it, but it's going to require more leadership than just telling people to come together. She's going to have to really step in and show leadership because the two leaders of the houses are miles apart on that issue.
Well, they're about 10% apart. Don DeFrancesco, the Senate president, thinks that the state should fund 100% of the reconstruction costs in the urban districts, the poor districts. Speaker Jack Collins, feels the state should fund 90%. The governor sides with the Senate president. The court mandate is for 100%. And I'm told by the front office that they expect there will be a compromise in the next month. You don't think there will be a compromise in the next month?
I think there has to be strong leadership coming from the governor on that issue and also on the Transportation Trust Fund, where there's also a wide divergence between the two leaders.
You would expect her budget speech to address that, yes?
Yes, but I think that should have been mentioned today as well, the trust fund, because it's a key economic issue.
What about this notion of introducing character education into the schools? You're an ex-educator. Is that a good concept?
I think it's an excellent concept. That's something that I've always been supportive of. We've had legislation that I've introduced in the past and other people have to emphasize character education. I think it's an important part of the educational process, so I would be supportive of that. I think it's very good.
Her other education initiatives were a virtual academy, teacher training on the internet, and extended mentoring for new teachers. Instead of 1 year of mentoring, new teachers should get 2 years. Any comments?
Again, I think that is a good concept. Realize that over the next 4 to 10 years, the number of teachers that we will need in New Jersey will be over 200,000 new teachers because of the increased enrollment and because of the retirement of many of the baby boom teachers. So obviously we need to train the new teachers in a more effective manner. Mentoring is a way to do that. The use of the internet sometimes is, I think, overblown. I don't know if it can replace the hands-on experience of working with teachers who have had the opportunity to work with children and working with children directly.
Governor, on the elderly, focused on trying to help the elderly stay in their homes. She's adding $5 million to a $60 million initiative she announced last year. $40 million of that comes up this year. It becomes a $60 million initiative in the third year. She's adding $5 million. Enough?
Again, it's hard to say what amount is correct. The important thing, though, is that as legislators, we're very frequently approached by constituents on these elderly issues, home care, Meals on Wheels, all of these types of programs, that the governor is supporting them, enhancing them is a very good development.
She wants to eliminate the waiting list for Meals on Wheels. She wants to add 700 families in public housing or senior citizen housing who get so-called congregate housing services. She wants criminal background checks for the 24,000 home health aides in the state. That one, I think, originated with a Bergen Record series on home health aides.
And Assemblywoman Loretta Weinberg has been a leader on pushing in that area for these background checks with Assemblywoman Charlotte Vandervalk. So I know that that's an issue that's of importance to the members of the legislature, the Senate and the Assembly. As Senator Kennedy said, we don't know what the exact numbers are, but we do know we need to be doing more to guarantee that the elderly can stay in their homes when they become ill or don't find themselves having to be forced to go to nursing homes. Obviously, the initiative is a good initiative. We need to be doing more in this area.
It shows that journalistic enterprises sometimes influence state policy. Senator?
I'd just like to say Gary Fenari, Senator from Bergen, Essex, was very instrumental in pushing that issue as well.
Another journalistic enterprise that I thought the governor was going to respond to was some tough editorials on the working poor that the Star-Ledger ran towards the end of the year. We expected her to announce an earned income tax credit at the state level today. It was not in the speech. Any comment?
Hopefully that would be in the budget message, because obviously it impacts upon the budget. I think that is an important element to be included in the state income tax. We have so many people who are working every day, working very hard, and still can't support their families. An earned income tax credit would be a true benefit here in New Jersey to that working poor.
Her environmental initiatives were to speed up watershed planning, to create 3 new air monitoring sites around the state to add to the one in Camden. She signed an executive order that would require more stringent environmental impact statements when one wants to extend a sewer line. And she's providing $15 million in additional grants for brownfields developments in urban areas, abandoned industrial sites turned into useful sites. Your comments on the environmental agenda here?
It's very good. I mean, nobody could disagree with any of these things. What surprised me, what the governor did not mention, which the Senate President mentioned and Dick Cody earlier today, the traffic, congestion, overdevelopment, the rateable chase, all of the things that affect the quality of life in New Jersey. The recent polls by Rutgers and the Eagleton poll show that this is the #1 quality of life concern: congestion, overdevelopment, getting around the state. She didn't mention it.
She didn't mention it, and yet she talked about smart growth, and I think some of these initiatives are designed to address that problem, although you're right, she didn't explicitly mention it.
I think that needed a head-on statement, just like profiling needed a head-on statement.
Yeah, it's interesting. The issue of overdevelopment and the chase for rateables, as Senator Kennedy just pointed out, is directly tied to property taxes. The reason why communities are out there competing for rateables is the more rateables, the less they have to increase property taxes on those people in their communities. But that also leads to environmental degradation, leads to traffic and congestion, and negative impact upon the quality of life in the state. So there's a relationship that has to be discussed, but that unfortunately is often not discussed and was not at all mentioned in this speech when we talk about the environment. What she's proposing, all very good, but there's something else that has to be done that we go beyond.
On property taxes?
Well, the relationship between the chase for rateables, the overdevelopment, as it impacts upon the fact that the reason that's occurring is because people don't want to increase property taxes, so they want more rateables so that they can spread the burden amongst more people.
We need to hike state taxes and lower local taxes?
No, that's not what I just said. I said that the reason why we have so many environmental problems is because there is an overdevelopment, there's a chase for rateables, and the reason why there's an overdevelopment and a chase for rateables is because property taxes are high, so municipalities, local officials, are trying to gain more rateables so that they can spread the burden of property taxes over a larger area.
In 5 or 10 seconds, characterize the speech for us.
A very good speech. I think the governor took advantage of the occasion to set out an agenda on technology, which is the issue of today, the information age. I give her a good grade for it.
All right, Senator Bernard Kenny, Assemblyman Joe Doria, thank you both very much. I'm Michael Aron. Let's go back to Kent Manahan now.
And thank you, Michael. That concludes our coverage of Governor Whitman's State of the State address. NJN will rebroadcast the governor's remarks and the Democratic response at 10 p.m. tonight. For Michael Aron, Walter Fields, and Roger Bodman, thank you for being with us. I'm Kent Manahan.